Welcome to Prophecy Countdown with author and pastor Kenneth Baer. Join us every week for the latest updates on what the Bible has to say about the events, the characters, and prophetic signs of the return of Jesus Christ and His coming kingdom. Make sure you not only subscribe, but like your favorite episodes and share it with your friends. Now, on with the broadcast.
Number 414, the Tribulation Temple. The Tribulation Temple, also called the Third Temple, is a topic of great interest and debate. It holds a central place in biblical prophecy, particularly regarding the end times. This temple, prophesied to be rebuilt in Jerusalem, is not just a religious structure, it is a key element in God's plan for the future. The Bible tells us that this temple will be desecrated. This will be a sign of the arrival of the Antichrist. The Antichrist will establish himself as a god in this temple. He will demand the world's worship. This event, known as the Abomination of Desolation, will mark the midpoint of the tribulation period. This period will be a time of unprecedented hardship and suffering, but it will also be a time when God's judgment is poured out on the earth. The Tribulation Temple's significance extends beyond its physical structure. It represents the attainment of the end times and the beginning of the fulfillment of God's promises to His people. It serves as a reminder that all of God's plans will come to pass. His timing is perfect, even if it doesn't align with our understanding. The very idea of a third temple generates a lot of excitement among Christians and Jews. For Christians, it signifies the nearness of Christ's return. It fuels our anticipation for the day when Christ will return for His bride. As we delve deeper into the topic of the third temple, we'll explore its historical context, its prophetic significance, and the different perspectives surrounding its rebuilding. To understand the significance of the Third Temple, we need to look back at the history of the first two temples. The first temple, built by King Solomon, was a magnificent structure. It was the center of Jewish worship for centuries. Sadly, it was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. This marked a time of great sorrow and exile for the Jewish people. After the Babylonian exile, the Jewish people returned to Jerusalem. They rebuilt their temple. This second temple, though not as grand as Solomon's, was still a place of great importance. It was this temple that King Herod restored and that Jesus himself taught and healed. However, this temple too was destroyed. The Romans, led by Titus, destroyed it in 70 AD. The destruction of the second temple was a devastating event for the Jewish people, but it was also a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Jesus himself had predicted its destruction. He warned that not one stone would be left upon another. His words were fulfilled literally. Since the destruction of the Second Temple, the Jewish people have yearned for its rebuilding. They long for a return to traditional worship practices. They pray for the day when they can once again offer sacrifices to God in their own temple. The idea of a third temple is deeply ingrained in Jewish consciousness. It represents hope. It signifies the restoration of God's favor. It fuels their anticipation for the coming of the Messiah. The Third Temple is not just a historical footnote, it is deeply intertwined with biblical prophecy. The book of Revelation in particular provides detailed descriptions of this temple and its role in the end times. Revelation 11, beginning in verse 1, states, "Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod. And the angel stood, saying, 'Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. This passage tells us that this temple during the tribulation will be physically measured. This act of measurement signifies judgment and separation. It implies a distinction between those who are faithful within the temple and those who are not outside the temple. It points to a separation between the true worshippers of God and those who oppose Him. The passage further indicates that the temple will be desecrated by the man of sin. This desecration is a key element of end times prophecy. The Bible also tells us that the Antichrist will play a significant role in the events surrounding the third temple. He will establish himself as a god in this temple, demanding the world's worship. This act of blasphemy will be a clear sign of his true nature. It also gives us a third name for this temple, the Temple of the Antichrist. The prophecy of this third temple is not just about a physical structure. It is about God's sovereignty. It is about his control over history. It is about his faithfulness to his promises. Even though it may appear that things in the world are out of control, events are actually falling into place. God is working out his plan, and the Tribulation Temple is a key part of that plan. The term abomination of desolation is mentioned several times in the Bible, both in the Old and New Testaments. It refers to a specific event that will take place in the end times, involving the desecration of the Third Temple. Daniel 9:27 provides a key passage about this event. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. This passage tells us that the Antichrist will make a covenant with Israel for 1 week, or 1/7, a period of 7 years. However, he will break this covenant in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period. At that time he will set himself up as God in the temple. He will put a stop to all Jewish sacrifices and offerings. This act of desecration is the abomination of desolation. Jesus himself referred to the abomination of desolation in Matthew 24:15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Jesus' words confirmed that the abomination of desolation is a future event. It is a sign that Daniel's prophecy of the 7-year tribulation period is certain. It will happen. It is a warning to those who remain and dwell on the earth that difficult times are ahead. The abomination of desolation is a pivotal event in biblical prophecy. It marks a turning point in history. It signals the beginning of the 7 trumpet and 7 bowl judgments. It is a reminder that God will not tolerate sin forever. A time of tribulation. The tribulation period is a 7-year period described in detail in the book of Revelation. It is a time of unprecedented hardship and suffering, marked by natural and supernatural disasters, wars, famines, and persecution. The arrival of the Antichrist marks the beginning of the tribulation period. Once the Antichrist desecrates the temple, God's judgment will be unleashed on the earth. This judgment will come in the form of 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls of God's wrath. Revelation 6-16 provides a vivid description of these judgments. The seals will unleash war, famine, and death. The trumpets will bring plagues, earthquakes, and cosmic disturbances. The bowls will pour out God's wrath on the earth, culminating in a final battle against the forces of evil. The tribulation period is not a time for the faint of heart. It is a time of great testing and trial. But it is also a time when God's power and faithfulness will be on full display. He will protect his people. He will judge the wicked. He will ultimately triumph over evil. The tribulation period is a stark reminder that we live in a fallen world. It is a time when the consequences of sin will be fully realized, but it is also a time of hope. It is a time when God will demonstrate his power and righteousness. It is a time when he will make all things new. Diverse views within Judaism. The prospect of a third temple evokes a wide range of emotions and opinions within the Jewish community. For some, it is a source of great hope and anticipation, a sign of God's faithfulness and the eventual coming of the Messiah. For others, it is a complex issue fraught with theological, political, and logistical challenges. Orthodox and some conservative Jews tend to view the rebuilding of the temple as an essential step towards fulfilling biblical prophecy and ushering in the Messianic age. They see it as a tangible symbol of God's covenant with his chosen people and a return to the traditional forms of worship practiced for centuries. These groups often actively support preparations for the temple's reconstruction, engaging in activities such as training priests in the ancient rituals, crafting sacred vessels and garments according to biblical specifications, and even obtaining red heifers for the purification ceremonies outlined in the Torah. They believe that by preparing for the temple, they are participating in God's divine plan. However, not all Jews share this enthusiasm for a third temple. Within the diverse tapestry of Jewish thought, there are varying perspectives on its necessity, feasibility, and even desirability. Some groups, particularly within the Reform and Reconstructionist movements, question the relevance of a physical temple in modern Judaism. They argue that the destruction of the Second Temple marked a significant shift in Jewish practice, moving away from animal sacrifices and towards a more spiritual understanding of worship centered around prayer, study, and acts of loving kindness. For them, rebuilding the temple might be seen as clinging to an outdated model of religious observance. Secular considerations. The question of the Third Temple becomes even more complex when considering the views of secular Jews. These individuals may identify culturally or ethnically as Jewish, but do not necessarily adhere to religious beliefs or practices. For them, the concept of a rebuilt temple might hold little personal significance. Their focus often lies on the state of Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people, a place of refuge and self-determination after centuries of persecution and displacement. They prioritize issues such as security, diplomacy, and economic development over theological debates about ancient structures. In fact, some secular Jews express concern that actively pursuing the construction of a third temple could inflame tensions with the Muslim world and destabilize the already volatile situation in the Middle East. They argue that prioritizing religious claims over peaceful coexistence could jeopardize Israel's hard-won security and international standing. Furthermore, the secular perspective often emphasizes the importance of separation between religion and state. They believe that Israel should function as a democracy guaranteeing equal rights and freedoms for all its citizens, regardless of religious affiliation. Rebuilding the temple, in their view, might be perceived as prioritizing one religion over others, and could potentially undermine Israel's commitment to pluralism. Adding another layer to this intricate tapestry is the question of the Temple Mount itself. The site revered by Jews as the location of the First and Second Temples, and by Muslims as the noble sanctuary, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. This small plateau in Jerusalem represents one of the most contested religious sites in the world, a focal point for both faith and conflict. For Muslims, the Al-Aqsa Mosque holds immense spiritual significance. It is considered the third holiest site in Islam, after the Kaaba in Mecca and the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. Muslims believe that the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven from this location during his night journey, making it a place of deep veneration and pilgrimage. The Dome of the Rock, with its golden dome gleaming over the Jerusalem skyline, further accentuates the site's importance to Muslims. It is believed to enshrine the foundation stone, the rock from which Muslims believe Muhammad ascended to heaven, and which Jews revere as the site where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son Isaac. The presence of these revered Islamic structures on the Temple Mount presents a formidable obstacle to the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. Any attempt to alter the status quo at this highly sensitive location could ignite religious tensions and potentially escalate into a wider conflict. Some have proposed alternative solutions, such as building the third temple alongside the existing mosques or relocating the mosques to another location. However, such proposals are met with strong opposition from both sides, making a peaceful resolution seem elusive. The question of the Temple Mount highlights the challenges of reconciling competing religious claims in a region steeped in history and conflict. It underscores the need for dialogue, understanding, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence. The Temple Mount, a place of profound religious significance for both Jews and Muslims, stands as a stark reminder of the complexities inherent in pursuing the construction of a third temple. For Jews, the Temple Mount represents the very heart of their spiritual heritage, the place where their ancestors worshipped God and offered sacrifices for generations. It is the place where, according to Jewish tradition, God's presence dwelt most powerfully on earth. The yearning for a return to this sacred space, to rebuild their temple and resume their ancient practices, runs deep within the soul of Jewish identity. It is a yearning fueled by centuries of exile, persecution, and longing for a return to their spiritual homeland. However, the presence of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock structures deeply revered by Muslims, creates a formidable obstacle to realizing this aspiration. The Temple Mount, known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, holds a place of immense sanctity within Islam. It is a place where, according to Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven, making it a site of profound religious and historical significance. Traditions are one thing, Bible prophecy, however, is a different matter. The Bible tells us a future Jewish temple, the Tribulation Temple. Whether it will share the Temple Mount with the Dome of the Rock or not is subject to speculation. The Bible isn't clear about its exact location. The presence of these revered Islamic structures on the Temple Mount creates a highly sensitive situation. However, there is a certain promise to both Christians and Jews, and Jerusalem and the Temple Mount will certainly play a significant role. Until that time, faithful Christians and Jews can place their faith in God, a God that has told us those things that will happen before they do.
Thank you for joining us on Prophecy Countdown with Pastor Ken Baer. Don't leave without first sharing the latest episode with your friends. Be sure to join us again for the latest updates on Prophecy Countdown.